hope that we will be able to set connection with Mr. Kristjan Bragason, who is General Secretary of the European Federation of Food, Agriculture and Tourism Trade Unions, EFFAT, who organizes more than 2.5 million workers in 125 trade unions in 35 European countries, defending the interests of almost 10 million European common agricultural policy. So I hope that we can have connection with him. His statement is called "The Fight for Decent Working Conditions for Agricultural Workers in Europe Continues."
Yeah, good morning to you all, and thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor and the opportunity to represent and be a voice of the 10 million workers of Europe that work in agriculture. Thank you very much for organizing this very relevant conference addressing the future agriculture sector and giving us a chance to discuss the challenges and opportunities of this crucial sector for economy and food security. Today, my focus will be on workers in agriculture and the need to improve the workers' rights in the sector. But before I start my intervention, I would just like to show you a short video with that illustrates some of the precarious working conditions that are unfortunately too frequent for agricultural workers in Europe.
The biggest challenge workers face in the Italian agriculture sector is that of labor exploitation and mass.
Vengono da pigliare col camioncino e ti portano a lavorare.
È così.
E poi non ti hanno pagato.
Non te lo pago.
Quest'estate tu hai lavorato nei campi?
Lavoro in qualche campo.
Cosa hai raccolto?
Un po' di pomodori, un po' di cocomeri.
La paga?
30 euro. Sui cocomeri intorno ai 40 euro. Poi ci raggiungi una piazza che ci sta qua a Villa di Serni, una marea di gente, cominciano a passare alcuni campi. Se hai un po' di fortuna riesci a salire per andare a lavorare, se è meno fortunato si tenta per il giorno dopo.
Se riesci a avere per esempio 25 o 30 ore al giorno e tu paghi il caporale 5 euro per il trasporto, 5 euro per l'impianto, allora qualcosa per il materasso, ma cosa ti rimane?
Vor ungefähr einer Woche begann ein schrecklicher Austausch von Menschen. Sie haben Standards verlangt, die nicht im Vertrag stehen. Dass 35 Kilo Erdbeeren pro Stunde gesammelt werden müssen. Wer das nicht geschafft hat, wurde automatisch entlassen.
Yeah, as you can see from the testimonies in this video, many workers in agriculture are faced with precarious working conditions and in some cases even modern day slavery. It is clear that it's far from all workers, of course, in agriculture that face those conditions, but way too many workers are experiencing those conditions. That's why we want to highlight this problem. We are fighting to try to improve those conditions for those 10 million workers that work in agriculture. Today, We have around 10 million workers employed in European agriculture. And here we are only talking about workers that are directly employed in agriculture. We are not referring to farmers and their families. The overall number of people working in agriculture has been falling in recent years, but the shift from family members doing the work to employed workers is happening. At the same time, we have also seen digitalization and automatization happening in many fields of agriculture, which is also having a great impact on jobs in the sector. And in the future, we will see the use of technology to even a greater extent than already today. Still, many jobs will continue to be needed to be done by manual labor, especially in terms of certain tasks related to harvesting. As we all know, agriculture is largely dependent on seasonal migrant workers. And when we talk about 10 million workers in the sector, we are not talking about full-time jobs. Most of the workers in the sectors are part-time or seasonal workers that only work for a specific time or travel around doing tasks in one country and harvesting for some time, and then move to a different task where there is a demand for those workers. So this year, agriculture has received a lot of attention from the mainstream media because of the COVID-19. This coverage has been both good and bad. Because of the pandemic, we have highlighted the importance of the sector for the EU economy. But at the same time, we've also been shedding light on the precarious working condition in the sector to a wider audience than before. And we believe that the EU institutions are finally starting to respond to the situation. Following the outbreak of the pandemic, the European agri-food sector has demonstrated extraordinary resilience, and thanks to astounding dedication of agri-food workers, the sector continues to provide Europeans with safe and high-quality food. As the coronavirus pandemic swept across Europe, the EU institutions and national leaders pledged to ensure that food supplies would not be affected, with several short-term measures implemented to avoid produce going unharvested or being wasted, and ultimately possible food shortages. So although the pandemic has resulted in high unemployment figures across many sectors in Europe, agriculture has been crying out for workers. Travel restrictions promoted dramatic labor shortages in Europe in the agriculture sectors, as seasonal workers were not able to reach their farms that they normally work at, and doing the harvesting during this period of time. The lack of workers in the fields demonstrates that labor condition in the agriculture sectors has been ignored for too long. That's at least our opinion. The sector depends to a large extent on seasonal migrant workers from both inside the EU and from third countries. These vulnerable workers make up a significant proportion of those picking our fruits and vegetables, as well as packing and processing food. The issue of precarious working conditions in agriculture are comparable all over Europe. We are seeing the same problems in Sweden, Germany, Ireland, France, Italy, and Spain, but also in Central and Southeastern Europe. However, the problems that we saw in Germany this year are maybe the main reason why we are seeing a greater attention to the issues in the sector than we've seen before. The importance of Germany as a country in the EU has definitely played its part in putting the spotlight on the sector. Early on, the Commission tried to mitigate the impact of labour shortages in the sector with the publication of a set of guidelines on free movement of critical workers, which was put forward on the 13th of March this year. Following a resolution of the European Parliament denouncing the deplorable condition faced by many European migrant workers and the outbreaks in farms and slaughterhouses, the Commission published a new set of guidelines on the 16th of July on the protection of seasonal migrant workers. Finally, in the beginning of October, the Council of the European Union approved a conclusion on improving the working and living condition of seasonal and other mobile workers. These initiatives are very important as they acknowledge the issue and give guidance how member states can resolve the issue. Still, EFFAT believes EU must go further and adopt some binding measures that protect those workers for the future. As I said earlier, the issues in the sectors related to labour and working conditions are not COVID related. EFFAT estimates that more than 4 million agricultural workers work in conditions of undeclared employment, precarious working and even labour conditions that are slave-like or at least labour exploitation. Migrant agricultural workers frequently live in poor and unsanitary housing. I have myself visited some of those fields around Europe, seen some informal settlement, similar to the ones that we saw in the video. And believe me, the living conditions are appalling. This critical situation has been reported already at multiple occasions by EFFAT, and we have been calling for urgent actions both at national and EU level. Until this year, most of our reports have been completely ignored. However, I feel that the EU has finally started to listen. That leads me to the elephant in the room, the common agriculture policy, which is in our part partly financing the social dumping that I have been describing. In our view, the EU direct payments and the financial contribution given under the framework of the common agriculture policy should only go to employers that respect labour agreements and labour standards. This has been a long-standing EFFAT demand. We believe that CAP payments should become conditional to the respect of applicable working conditions and employer obligations resulting from the relevant collective agreements, as well as EU and national social and labour law, and also ILO conventions. We are not demanding anything more for agricultural workers than other workers in our society are receiving. We are only talking about applicable labour standards. This is something that should happen in any case. We just want agricultural workers to have the same wages and rights that apply to other workers in our societies. The principle is fairly simple. If Europe's taxpayers provide support to you as a farmer, the minimum requirement should be that you follow the rules that apply in your country. This is in the interest of most farmers as well. Majority of farmers treat their workers well, and therefore this is so-called social dumping, and social dumping and labour exploitation is causing unfair competition in the sector. And we should not forget that we already have some conditionalities in the CAP. Currently, the farm subsidies are conditional on compliance with body of existing EU legislation in respect to environmental protection, public health, and animal welfare. With that said, I want to finish by mentioning a few of our priorities we are focusing on at the moment. With the trialogue negotiation between the European Commission, the Council and the Parliament on the Common Agriculture Policy already started, it is important to further highlight our demands for the social and labour conditionality. The European Parliament included important paragraphs on social conditionality in the final text of the Common Agriculture Policy, which we hope will be included in the final versions of the CAP strategic plans and the horizontal regulation. But unfortunately, the general approach of the Council of Ministers does not include any mentioning of social conditionality. In coming weeks and months, EFFAT will be continuing to lobby for this social conditionality, and we hope that in the final document we will find this mentioning. We really hope that you can also support us in this crucial demand that aims at raising labour standards in one of the most precarious and challenging sectors of the economy. It should be the many employers who do provide their employees with decent working conditions and safe working environment who are the only beneficiaries of the CAP financial support. We must go forward and deliver a future common agriculture policy that does not contribute to workers' exploitation and social dumping. EU must send a clear message: EU funding is not for those who exploit workers. I've spoken a lot about the CAP, but there are a few other EU initiatives EFFAT is working on at the moment in order to protect workers and create decent working conditions in the sector. We are closely following the discussion on the directive on adequate minimum wages and collective bargaining presented by the Commissioner Smith in the end of October. We believe this is an important initiative that will benefit many vulnerable groups, such as agriculture workers, for the future. It will also give us an opportunity to strengthen the social dialogue within the sector. Another important dossier is the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. And we believe the Farm to Fork strategy will play an important role in developing a sustainable food system. And I can see that this topic is on the agenda in the afternoon, but I just want to make it clear that it's really important to ensure that the three dimensions of sustainability are taken on board in the development of any EU initiative in the framework of the Farm to Fork strategy. We need to have a good balance between economic, environmental and social factors. The Common Agriculture Policy for us is an important part of the EU budget, and it's very important for Europe's food security and the rural development. EFFAT believes Europe needs strong and sustainable agriculture, and that is why EU should give strong support to farmers across Europe. We need to make the rural areas more livable and attractive to attract young people and attract people from all generations. But European farmers also need support and protection from big multinational companies, food producers, retailers, and bad trade agreements. It is crucial that the imbalances and distortion of competition affecting most vulnerable actors in the food chain, the farmers, needs to be rebalanced. This is the only manner to ensure that the Farm to Fork strategy will be successful for the future. Finally, I just want to give you a short and brief overview of the advocacy work EFFAT is currently doing towards the European Commission in order to improve seasonal migrant workers' rights. As I've highlighted several times already, the challenges these workers are facing are a consequence of the loopholes and shortcomings of the EU legal framework on the labour mobility, migration and social security coordination, but also due to lack of labour inspection and enforcement of labour standards in the sector. That's why we are pushing for the following measures. We would like to see legally binding instrument for decent housing for all agriculture workers. We want to see improved social security provisions and coordination of social security numbers. And we would like to see improved labor inspections in the sector, and we believe that the European Labour Authority has an important role to play there. However, this important institution is still not functioning as it should do, and we are hoping that when it will run properly, it will be able to deal with the issues of cross-border and mobile workers in Europe. But we as trade union also need to do better work at national and at European level. We must improve the service we offer to those workers, as it is well documented that there is a lack of proper information available to agriculture workers in appropriate languages as well about national standards, practices, and workers' rights. That's all for now, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions, and I hope that you all got the message that I was trying to deliver here today. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Bragason, I'm so pleased that we are still in touch, and that's why I would like to use it. And first of all, I would like to ask questions to you, Professor Smutka. First, then I will follow with my questions. No other questions. So good morning. I would like to ask one thing. The European Union, as such, is not homogeneous. In fact, it's heterogeneous. Individual European countries are different. So do you think it is real that standards may be implemented, standardized tools at the entire EU level, contrary to the fact that agriculture systems of individual European member states are different, and ILO, an organization of work and involvement of seasonal work is handled differently by individual member states? Thank you very much.
Thank you for this question, if I'm allowed to answer it now. I think it's important to understand that we are not asking for a harmonized system of standards for the whole of Europe. And we agree that there are heterogenic and you see a huge differences between the countries in Europe. But what we are asking for is that employers and farmers in each of the member states of EU follow the national legislation that is in place. If, for example, there is a legislation on minimum wages, which requires a certain amount of money to be paid to employers, this money should also be paid to agriculture workers. We are not asking for the standards to be harmonized across Europe. We are only asking that the farmers and the employers in each of the member states follow the rules that apply in that country. And if there are EU legislations that apply in all countries, then they should also be followed. In terms of ILO conventions, we are mainly concerned with core ILO conventions that are already in place in most member states of the EU, and so we are not asking the countries to go further than to ask the farmers or employers to follow the ILO convention that have been ratified in that country.
Já bych se chtěl zeptat na následující věc. To, o čem jste tady mluvil, je
I would like to ask the following. It is true what you have explained. It is well known
ale není
fact,
to
but
vůbec nic nového, jenom se to
nothing
výrazně
new.
aktualizovalo v
Only
souvislosti
it has been updated
s letošní
with
loňskou
respect to
pandemií.
this and last year pandemic, COVID.
A
And there are several troubles also in the other areas in the European Union. For instance, tax paradise countries, which is constantly being discussed, or dual food quality, and there is no solution because it has not been resolved yet, because groups that make decisions are truly politically influenced. Think very strong. So, for instance, social conditions of seasonal workers. For instance, in Western Europe, large part of early vegetable has not been harvested in Western Europe. There were troubles with wine harvesting, so the agriculture companies will get money for indemnification of damages. For instance, fair prices or subsidies, which prefer countries selling agricultural surplus compared to Eastern European countries, where those products are exported for dumping prices. What to do with troubles of packaging, which is imported from abroad, which also leads to other losses. So number of seasonal workers that arrived were not even employed. So do you think sanctions would improve the situation? I remember from my own experience that 50 years ago, when I worked in hop picking, in some agriculture farms, the accommodation conditions somewhere were quite horrible, and some farms they were quite acceptable. So do you think sanctions will improve the situation? And speaking about seasonal workers being infected by COVID, then of course it was true for the processing industry, for instance, in German slaughterhouses. So when do you think those issues that are not new will be resolved?
This is a big question. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say when those issues will be resolved, and I'm not sure that we will ever have a complete resolvement of this issue. It's clear that we always have some problems in all economic sectors and all occupations of employers that do not follow the law and standards. However, I feel that if we are willing to implement sanctions on animal welfare, and we are willing to implement sanctions regarding to receiving certain climate standards, environmental standards, why should we not use the same conditionalities when it comes to following labor standards? It's probably not going to solve all problems, but it will at least give a clear signal that the European Union will not tolerate that the public funding is going to be used to create unfair competition between those that treat workers well, the majority of employers and farmers, and those that treat the workers poorly get the same kind of support. This just makes no sense to me. And therefore, I think sanctions actually are a clear message and a signal that the EU will not tolerate such behavior.